Good morning. Our first speaker today is Dr. Liu-Thompkins, Professor of Marketing and Director of Loyalty Science Lab in the Strome College of Business at Old Dominion University. Yuping specialises in combining customer data with consumer psychology to derive useful insights and actionable marketing strategies. Yuping's research has been published in top marketing journals, and she's made media appearances in the New York Times and on various podcasts. Today, Yuping is joining us to discuss how you can personalize your loyalty program communication by leveraging goal psychology. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Yuping Liu-Thompkins.
Thank you, Carly. I'm very excited to be here and talking to all of the ALA friends about personalization in loyalty program communication by leveraging goal psychology. Before I get to the main topic of the conversation here, I would like to just share some information about the Loyalty Science Lab initiative that I established at my university from about 2 years ago. We established this basically as a bridge connecting industry and academic research. And what we do is we obviously do a lot of research related to loyalty topics on brand loyalty, customer loyalty, but we also use that opportunity to share out the research insights to practitioners so that you can actually use those insights. We also work with practitioners to get the questions that you have and to help answer some of those questions. So if that's something you're interested in, I encourage you to follow us on LinkedIn at the link here or scan this QR code. And we basically, share research insights for practitioners to use. So back to the main topic of what I'm here to talk about today. Loyalty program behavior is goal pursuit. What does that mean? When you are looking at what customers do in the loyalty program, whether that's they're going after a free reward or they're going after the next tier so that they can get some premium benefits, it's really a going after a goal process, right? That free reward or that goal becomes a goal that they're really looking after. And why do we care about that? Because there's a lot of psychology research that actually shows a lot of motivational aspects to human behavior that's driven by goals. And so by understanding that goal process, it can really help you figure out what is the best way to nudge your customers so that they can, make the additional purchases or be more engaged in the program as you would like them to. Another component or another beauty of really leveraging this goal psychology is that the types of information that you need for utilizing the goal psychology is really simple. I have listed a couple of them here. For example, to answer how much progress a member has made, all you need is pretty much the points they have earned, the tier they're at right now, or how far they are from the next reward or tier, and have they experience any promotion or demotion, at a recent point in time. When you're looking at these, you probably recognize that most of these are already existing information you capture in your loyalty program management database. And so all you have to do is leverage this information you already have to customize how you talk with your customers. There's a lot of research actually on goal-related psychology and how to nudge people. And what I'm going to share here today is going to be a very small sample of it. Specifically, what I wanted to focus on talking to you about today is on the psychology of progress and distance. In other words, how far have I come and how far am I to the goal that I'm moving towards? And so in the loyalty program setting, you can think of it as how far am I to the goal tier or how far am I to the next reward threshold that I'm about to meet. One of the most well-known effects in the loyalty program context, utilizing this goal psychology is the point pressure effect. Some also call it goal gradient effect. The idea actually came from animal research many decades ago that looked at mice as they run toward cheese. As they get closer, they actually ran faster. And so it turns out human beings actually don't behave that differently in that sense. The closer generally we are towards a goal, the more motivated we feel, and the harder we work towards that goal. And the seminal research that introduced this goal gradient effect or point pressure effect into the loyalty programs is the researchers actually conducted a simple experiment in the field with a coffee shop. The program itself is simply designed just a simple punch card type of program where you buy 10 coffees, you get one for free. And the researchers basically look at the amount of time people wait until they make the next purchase. Obviously, as a business, you want them to wait less and you want them to come more frequently. And so the impact they observe from the beginning when people just starting working towards that free reward versus at the end when they're getting really close to the reward, they discover about a 21% acceleration of that purchase. And when you look at this, this is not a subtle effect. 21% is actually a pretty significant lift in the purchase behavior. So this goal psychology can really have a very significant impact on people's behavior. What does that mean to your loyalty program communication? So one of the obvious recommendations to come out of this is that people or members in your program that are close to whether it's a reward or to a tier, they are already in a very high motivational state. And so this is a great window of opportunity where you can potentially do something more with your customers. For example, you tell them you're only 50 points away and try this particular product to help you reach the next level. This would be a great opportunity. For example, you're recommending to the consumers products that might be relevant to them, but they have not purchased before. Or if you're introducing a new product to market, these would be customers that would be at a very aware stage of their goal process and would be more receptive to what you're trying to tell them. And obviously, for any of these to really work, one condition is that customers need to be aware of where they are in the program, right? So a lot of times that requires the program to help them keep track of where they are. And what you see on the screen over here is different statements related to loyalty programs. So you can see that, for example, in the Uber Rewards, I have, 450 points. In the Marriott Rewards is 38 points and so forth. And so these are typically standardized in the loyalty program communication. So the question is it a good idea to really standardize this? When you're really looking at how people judge where they are on a journey towards something, you have two very subtle ways of really looking at that information. Let's say I'm here right now and I wanted to see how much progress I have made. I have two options. One is I can look forward to see, okay, that's where I need to go and this is how far I still have to go. Or you can choose to look the other way. You look backwards and say, okay, that's where I started and this is how much progress I have made so far. So either way can give you an idea of where you are in the goal pursuit process. The question is that how does that different views of your progress versus the distance really change your behavior? And this is looking back at the examples I showed earlier. You can see that a lot of these actually use more of a backward progress, giving you information about how far you have come. For example, you have already accumulated 450. You have already accumulated 38 and so forth. But there's also an example over here, not as big in the statement here in the Nordstrom Nordic Club statement, where it tells you how many points you still need to make in order to get to the next node, which is a free reward that you would get from the program. So programs are already implementing different ways of communication. The question is that how you should really customize that information to match with the consumer's mindset. So where they are, how far they are in the program, you should potentially adapt that information and carefully communicate that progress information to consumers. So one thing you can learn from psychology to help you do that is something called small area hypothesis. And the basic idea is that we are more motivated by the smaller area that we see. For example, when you're thinking about a process going from the start to finish, if you are already close to the finish line, when you look backward versus look forward, the look forward part is going to be the smaller section, right? Therefore, when you look towards your goal, you're going to feel more motivated as you close that gap. And that's where the goal gradient effect essentially is about, right? As you sprint towards the finish line, you're going to try harder and you are likely to sprint towards that finish line. And versus for someone who's kind of starting the journey at that process, and they're not far from the starting point and still quite far away from the finish line, when they look backward and see how far they have come and see themselves getting further and further away from that starting line, that is what motivates them a little bit more. So research has basically shown that when you communicate that small area information to customers, is going to create more of a motivational effect and nudge them try a little harder and motivate them a little bit more. So in one of our own research, we actually worked with a recreational retailer, try to understand how do these different types of feedback or progress feedback can potentially influence customers' behavior. And what we did was we took a group of customers and we randomized them into different conditions. So one group of consumers, we basically just don't touch them, don't give them progress feedback, and just don't communicate, right? And the other two groups, one of the groups, we randomly assign them to a backward-looking feedback condition. So what you see on the top here, where we tell them this is the amount of progress that you have made, so how many points they have earned in the program. And then the third group actually received the opposite of a forward-looking feedback. For them, the emphasis is really in terms of to the next bonus level, how far do you still have to go? And we compare the differences in terms of sales impact. And this is just one campaign, one communication. What we have found, as you can see in the chart over here, the targeting really matters. When you, for example, for backward feedback, when you target towards the right person, we saw over 19 euros of impact, positive lift in sales impact from that. On average across those individuals. But if you are targeting it towards the wrong people, you're actually losing money. And that's a pretty significant message to actually share with loyalty program providers, which is if you are not doing a good job targeting your message towards people, sometimes you can actually have a negative impact on people's behavior. And so you might be better off not communicating than communicating the wrong message. And so what we found here, we have actually continued to study that in a separate context, looking at airline loyalty program. So we analyzed the sales information as well as the email communication information in that airline program. And we saw similar patterns as well that, the wrong communication, if you offer the feedback in the wrong way, it actually creates a detrimental effect versus if you do well targeting it towards the right people, then it creates a more of a positive lift. And what we have learned through this process is really that standardization is no longer considered a safe option. We typically think, if I don't do personalization, I can just standardize my communication and that's okay. And it's a safe option to do. But in some cases, you might actually be doing more harm than good. And this is a sounding alarm to program managers to really think about how you personalize your communication to your members. And I think that if you do it right, as we can see earlier, there's a pretty significant lift in what people actually do. And that was only from one communication. It wasn't even multiple messaging, just one single communication. And you can imagine the scale of the impact if you actually replicate at multiple communication intervals. So another thing that I wanted to talk about is distance has also been shown to affect how people look at things. And particularly if you compare people who are really close to a goal versus people who are very far away from a goal, the way they view things, the mindset actually differs from each other. If I'm close to something, I tend to be more likely to focus on the very specific details. I focus on the how to make things happen. My thinking is focused on very detail-oriented, very concrete. For example, what I have on the slide here as an example, if you're making a shopping list, you're more likely to think of that as, grabbing a pen and a pad to write it down, or grab your phone to write down something. Versus if you are compared with a person who's far away from a goal, they tend to focus more on the why. Why am I going onto this journey? They're likely to think at a high level information. So making a shopping list rather than the specific, as grabbing my phone to write down the list, is more about getting organized so that I don't miss anything when I go shopping, right? And so this mindset difference has actually been proven a lot in psychology research. And it turns out you can utilize these differences in how you communicate with your customers. Here's one example here is in terms of what do you focus. When you think about you're trying to sell a product to customers or recommend a product to customers, one thing you can do is you can focus on the attributes of the product. What is good about it? What makes your product better, potentially compare with other competitors. The other way to look at it is to look at the overall benefit. What is really the overall benefit? It doesn't matter how exactly what the price level is, or what exactly is the things that you provide. What is the overall benefit that consumers can get out of that product? And so when you're close to a reward or to a tier, what you wanted to be more focused on is that product attribute information. For example, you can emphasize that your reward card can offer a 90-day purchase protection, a very specific concrete product attribute that you are offering here. Versus for someone who's far away from that reward or tier, you wanted to tell them that, look, this is a great thing you wanted to work towards. Even though you're still far, you are getting great benefits. And so in this example here, you can tell them that your reward card gives you a peace of mind. It doesn't necessarily matter so much how exactly that happens. The important thing is that overall benefit is appealing to them. Another example here is when people are close to the reward and they have a more concrete mindset. In that situation, they tend to focus on whether something is possible or not, right? So if they're close to your reward, close to your goal, they're really concerned about, when am I going to get there and how am I going to get there? Will I actually be able to get there? And so at that point in time, what you want to communicate to them is a little encouragement to tell them that this is really within reach, right? If you just do one more purchase, you are already there. Versus for someone who's actually at the far away stage, at that point, you wanted to, really nudge them to tell them that it is something you really wanted to do. It's something that's desirable. So you wanted to emphasize more of what do you really get at the end, not necessarily whether you can get there or not, but what do you really get at the end, and emphasize that it's something that they want, it's something desirable. So this slide here shows you some other examples. For example, when do you focus on more feelings-oriented emotional appeals, or when do you focus on more of a thinking-oriented appeals? And do you focus on more avoiding the negative things from happening, or avoid the positive things, promoting the positive things that are happening? And so there's a list of different things that you can potentially adapt based on how far people are and what that mindset difference is for individuals. And what's great about this understanding of this concrete versus abstract mindset is that it doesn't just work with distance per se. In the loyalty program context, it can also work with status as well. So when we're thinking about tier, which is kind of representing a virtual height, how high you are off the ground, it also works with that mindset difference. When for members that are in the base tier, they are close to the ground, so their mentality or the mindset of things is going to be more similar to that close to the goal type of situation, versus consumers that are in the higher tier, for example, gold tier in the example here, they tend to share more of that far and abstract type of mindset. And so you can use the same idea of personalize the messages and use the different types of appeals to the customers. So that's a really short summary of the kinds of things that you can potentially do by utilizing very simple information in the program. Hopefully, I've convinced you that, by looking at people's behavior in the loyalty program as goal-oriented behavior, it can really help you do some easy personalization of your member communication. And some of the key metrics that I recommend to monitor in this process, includes point balance, tiers, your points to the next tier. And some of the things I didn't really say is the speed towards the goal. For example, how many points they're earning per period, and also the promotion or demotion in terms of tiers and other components of the program as well. And so that's all for my presentation.
Thanks, Yuping. Great advice on language changes from close to versus far away. Really something for us to consider. We have a few questions from the audience. So the first one is, can you give us more examples of a company or companies that leverage goal psychology well?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the companies that come to mind is actually Panera Bread. It's a fast casual restaurant chain in the United States. And their reward program is actually designed very unusually. Rather than having a set point structure and so forth, is a highly personalized program. So you earn rewards, and the frequency you earn rewards are all personalized. And one of the things that they really use on the goal gradient or point pressure effect is when you have your store receipts, or if you see online, your statement online, it shows you how many visits you are away from your next reward. And it's typically not very far. You're probably 4, 5, or 3 visits away. And it creates a constant feeling of you're almost there. So it's a great way to drive customers' experience towards, getting to that goal, getting to that reward in just a couple of visits. And I think, in online learning, I would say the app, language app, Duolingo, the way they create challenges are also a great example of using that goal psychology to nudge people. And obviously gamification, anything the gaming industry does. So that's why games are so addictive, right? So those are all really good contexts where goal psychology has been utilized really well to drive customer loyalty and engagement behaviors.
Great example. The next question we have is, does this idea of goal psychology work across all loyalty programs? And what happens to consumers who don't care enough to treat the rewards as goals?
That's a great question. So, goal psychology, to utilize goal psychology, there is some precondition to it. Customer needs to be involved enough, right? And they need to care enough, basically, to see the rewards or see the tiers as their goals. And they need to be aware of where they are in terms of progress. What happens when that doesn't happen? So sometimes we get into situations or product categories where people are very lowly involved. They earn points. It's pretty much silently in the background, and they don't really track how well they're doing and so forth. In those kind of situations, I think there's an alternative to goal-oriented behavior, which is habit. So rather than trying to drive people more towards the goal that they don't really care about, what you wanted to think about in terms of program communication and program design is to develop that habit. And habit is very different in the sense that it's automatic. And so it's really triggered by more, whether that's a lot of repetition of the same behavior, and also is triggered by certain contextual cues. So the way you would design the program, sometimes actually being consciously driving towards a goal is actually kind of the counter opposite to that. And so you wanted to, think about if habit is the main mechanism you're going towards because you're a low involvement product category where people don't really care about things. In that situation, it might be better to design your program to more towards that fashion, or communicate your things to accentuate the triggers. Triggers can be what time of the day, it could be where you are geographically, and who you are with. And so emphasize those contextual cues in your communication strategy to be able to do that. And we have research that basically shows that the program design factors would also have an impact on that as well. So yeah, goal psychology, I would say, not necessarily workable in all of the settings. Habit is a great alternative to the goal psychology if it's not something that works for your category.
Great. And what other psychological drivers are great to use in loyalty that you haven't mentioned?
I think besides the two that I've already mentioned in terms of goal psychology and in terms of habit development, there are quite a few other ones that are available as well. I'll just mention a few here. So one is, a lot of loyalty programs already do that, is to leverage that feeling of superiority. We as human beings all like to feel, better or superior. We wanted to feel special. And so obviously a lot of tier-based loyalty programs that offer premium tiers with extra benefits is exactly leveraging that to give customers that are more frequent buyers a sense of being superior than others. I think that not only applies to a tier kind of situation, but also works to other aspects as well. For example, research has shown that if you feel like you're going to be in the program and you're going to be able to earn points faster than other people, in other words, you're going to have an advantage, it will drive you more likely to join the program. So there are a lot of this feeling of superiority that you can try to instill in your customers and to make them feel special, feel good about themselves. And that can a lot of times drive their loyalty behavior. But obviously there's some nuance to that too, in the sense that when you make one customer feel superior, are you making another customer feel bad? So the customers that are in the base tiers, a lot of times there's some potential negative spillover effect on these lower tier customers or people who are not quite treated as VIPs. And so there's a delicate balance, I think, between those two things and how you publicize the benefits for the higher tier members without necessarily alienating the lower tier customers. So that I think the feeling of superiority is a great one in driving loyalty program behavior. Another one I would say is the social effects of it. When you look at car brands, for example, some of them offer reward programs that creates more than just earning any program currency through services or through sales, but it also drive you into a car owners kind of club. So that you feel a sense of belonging there and you have that social aspect of your loyalty. And I think that social elements of loyalty is also really important because a lot of times, one is I can potentially become loyal to something because my friends are, really into something or really loyal to a brand. The other element of it too is that I am loyal to a brand by meeting others that are also loyal to a brand. It kind of reinforces my belief and make me feel better about my choice. And so that creates a positive reinforcement. So that social element of loyalty, I think, is also really important as well.
Great, that makes a lot of sense. Do you have any examples of any categories using goal gradient effect for grudge purposes?
Good question. So grudge purchases, I think, kind of goes back to what I said earlier, is probably one of the categories where people may or may not care enough to necessarily go after a goal. So I would say one of the things I would potentially try would be to run more with a habit type of idea. But I think beyond that, there are some things you can potentially do. One research study actually showed that, one thing behind that comes out of the goal gradient effect is create artificial progress. So in other words, you make people feel that they're closer when in reality it's about the same. So one of the research studies actually look at a car wash program. So similar to kind of grudge context where people are not really caring too much in that situation. So the researchers basically tested two different programs where one, you told that you need to do 8 car washes in order to earn a new one, right? In the other one, they tell you have to do 10, but they give you 2 for free at the start, so that you still have only 8 to earn. But they found a positive lift in terms of behavior for the people who were told 10, but they were given 2 to create that artificial lift.
Terrific. We've only got a little bit of time, but the final question from the audience is, do the same principles apply in low frequency purchase programs versus high frequency purchase programs?
Absolutely. I think that the really high frequency purchase programs, I think, is a great context for utilizing habitual behavior versus I think in the lower frequency program where it takes a while for people to earn rewards, that's where goal psychology is really, really important because you don't want it to lose people half of the way through, and you wanted to really be able to get to them. So with the low frequency, I would say the goal psychology would be even more important in that context, and break it down into smaller goals.
Terrific. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Glad to be here.